Hey guys, welcome to the first 7eight9 online. Isn't it exciting? If you haven't met me before, my name is Grace, and I'm hanging around with you guys a bit this year. I'm a student pastor studying at Carey Baptist College, so it's really cool that I'm able to hang out with you guys. And isn't it cool that we have technology so that we can still have fun and still do this, even though it's online? So yeah, today we're talking about the Passover, about communion and the Last Supper and how it all connects together and fits together. So if you haven't had a chance yet, pause this video and go and look at that 4-minute other video that Matt has emailed to your parents, because that explains Passover. And that's really important introduction to what we're talking about today. So as we know, the Passover was what the Jews were already celebrating right before Jesus' crucifixion. So they were already remembering the story of how God rescued them, how a lamb died in the place of their firstborns, and they painted the blood on the door, you know the story, to signal that a sacrifice had taken place. And then they scoffed down one last meal, Last Supper, interesting, before gapping it out of Egypt, and then they were free from slavery. That's how God saved them. So already we've got the 3 key symbols here: bread, blood, and a lamb. You're probably already like, oh, I see where she's going with this. So the Jews, centuries later, God commanded them to celebrate this as a festival every year. So they simulated kind of that last meal that they had, the quick scoff down your dinner before you have to leave kind of thing, with unleavened bread and by sacrificing a lamb. So they do that every year. So this is the backdrop on which Jesus is speaking. So to the disciples and to the Jews, doing things to commemorate important events and things that God has done throughout Israel's history, like rescuing them from slavery in Egypt, pretty big thing. So doing things and having festivals to commemorate that, that's a normal thing. Jews are used to that. But Jesus is taking the Passover festival and he's adding a whole new layer onto this event. They're already remembering it, but he's shifting their focus beyond just history and onto him. He's saying, this, the bread, is my body given for you. Do this, eat the Passover bread, to remember me. Not to remember the Passover, like you've always done, not to remember the Exodus, but to remember me. So Jesus isn't saying that the Passover isn't important anymore, but he is explaining that the Passover wasn't it. It wasn't the full stop. He's saying, I'm it. I'm the completion and the fulfillment of everything. So the Passover meal and the exodus from slavery in Egypt were all leading up to another meal and another greater rescue from a different kind of slavery. This festival that Israel has been celebrating for centuries is actually all about Jesus. He's like the climax. So centuries later, we use those 3 same key symbols. We eat the bread, we drink the cup, whether it's wine or grape juice, which reminds us of the blood and of sacrifice and that death happened. And we don't eat lamb, but we remember our sacrificial lamb, Jesus. And we do all of this to remember that Jesus is it. He's the full stop. He's the fulfillment. He's the completion. He's what it's all about. Jesus is our rescuer and the one who died in our place and rescued us from our slavery, like the Israelites in Egypt. And 1 Corinthians 11:26 says, "For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." So every time we take communion, every time we eat the bread and drink of the cup, and we think about Jesus, we're basically proclaiming the gospel. We're acting it out in a way, the sacrifice that Jesus made for us, in a similar way that the Jews were acting out the Exodus, kind of, with the Passover festival. But the next verse in that Corinthians 11 says, "So then whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of sinning against the body and the blood of the Lord. Everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat the bread and drink from the cup. And it says that if we don't, we drink judgment on ourselves. It's a pretty scary thing to think about, but do we kind of understand why? Taking communion is such a serious thing because we're remembering and affirming and proclaiming the sacrifice of our Lord Jesus. It's not just a snack to get us through Sunday. We're proclaiming the good news when we take part. So it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be done before God and with our hearts turned to Him. Isn't it cool, though? The continuity, those three events are all using the same symbols and they're all leading up to Jesus. It's really cool that we can take part in this tradition too. On Sunday, we'll be taking communion together as a church whānau, within our own homes, of course. So we thought, why don't we send you a recipe so you can make bread yourself? It's not unleavened, but it's still bread, so it tastes good. It gives you something interesting to do away from screens and TVs and stuff if you're bored as well. I found a cool recipe for fried flatbreads and I had a go, have a look at my efforts. My brother and I really enjoyed them. It was good fun. So the recipe will be sent out to your parents for you guys to use. Check with them about kitchen and ingredients and heat and oil and all of that. Run it past them first. But do show us photos and let us know how you go with that. I'm sure you'll have heaps of fun. And we were thinking, given that we're going to be doing communion together on Sunday morning, why don't you make that bread and then use it for communion? So yeah, you can bless your family that way. So bless you all. I hope that this gives you something to think about and something to do with your family as well. Also in the email, you should have some worksheets that you can do, some scriptures that you can look up and think about. Yeah, so I hope this is a blessing to you. Hope you're having a great week. It's good to see you all again. Do let us know how you go. Send us videos if you want, or write up something, your reflections, your thoughts. Show us your bread. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So bless you all. Have peace. Kia kaha.